Hey guys, Eric Carroll with Dad Talk today. That wasn't supposed to happen. Sorry. Let's get to the show. All right, what's up, everybody? Happy Father's Day. This is kind of a last-minute thing. I was trying to think of something to put together for Father's Day. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still not quite too sure what we was going to do. But I said, what better way to start off this day than coming and spending it with you guys? I know a lot of you are fighting things that the world can only imagine. And in many ways, fathers have lost their voice in today's society. And so today what I want to do, and just to say, like, man, I accidentally hit a commercial. I wish I could show you the behind the scenes. But I do that because it takes a little while for people to start getting in here. But I wanted to make sure to have the platform for any of these dads that are being held back from their children today. If there's something that you'd like to say to them, and be mindful, we can't go into the whole story and stuff, but if you'd like to tell them you love them, and what it feels like to be a dad on Father's Day that's not being allowed to see their children, put it down in the comments. We're going to read it. I got to go do my Father's Day thing here in a second. I got a lot of men we want to give a thank you to today. So, but before I did that, I wanted to start it off with you guys. In the meantime, while we're waiting on some people to come in here and put their comments down below, I want to say a very big thank you to NTD News. They reached out to me earlier last week and said, Eric, we want to do a special on Father's Day to talk about the fatherless crisis, what's going on in the family courts. And that's a pretty big thing, guys. It's not too often that you hear people wanting to talk about what's going on in the family courts. So I really appreciate that. You see many of these media outlets that like to talk about the fatherless crisis because that's the popular thing to do, right? But they always seem to leave out the family court angle. What's causing the fatherlessness epidemic? All we're going to tell you is the statistics and the bad things that are happening because of it. But what's causing it? And what it does is it leaves this void in there to make it seem like, well, dads just aren't there. It's because dads are sorry or dads don't want to be in their children's lives. And it couldn't be further from the truth. So for them to do this, I really appreciate it. I'm going to play that interview for you guys. It's only like 5 minutes long. And once I do that, I'm going to come back, speak with you a little bit more. And again, if there's something that you would like to say to your kids, whether you're an alienated dad, maybe you're a dad that's been through this before and you've got beyond it, or maybe you're a dad that hasn't been through this, but you want to be mindful and you follow the show. Anything you want to say to your kids, bring it up in here, and we're going to make sure to read it out here in just a second. But I'll be back right after this interview. And again, thank you to NTD News. This means the world to me.
And with Father's Day approaching, we have host of Dad Talk Today, Eric Carroll, here to join us. Eric Carroll, host of Dad Talk, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Hey, Steve, thank you so much.
Eric, if you could, tell us a little bit about, what you guys are doing, what your program is all about there at Dad Talk.
So Dad Talk is a program that really focuses on men's issues, especially when it comes to divorce and like the unequal custody laws. But we speak about many different things. We've traveled the country. Last year, we went to 43 different states, going to capitals, conferences, you name it, trying to get out the message of fatherhood anywhere that we can. The fatherless rate right now is very alarming, and you're starting to see so many things. I mean, even the school shootings, teen pregnancies, juvenile rates, every bit of that kind of ties back to fatherlessness. It's one of the biggest common denominators that we're seeing. So we're in the fight trying to promote the nuclear family and get those traditional family values back in the home.
You mentioned an interesting point there. It's something that we don't really talk about too much, but there is somewhat of a war on dads throughout the country. Tell us about this a little bit.
It's hard. Statistics can be all over the place. The national average last time I looked was 82.5% of the time that dads are fighting for custody of their children, they're losing. In states like Texas, is around 90%. Family court is a $60 billion a year industry, and it didn't get that way because dads aren't fighting, trying to be in their kids' lives. However, you see many different people talking about the fatherless issue, but maybe not so much what's causing it. Why do we have a fatherless issue? I believe society has really marginalized men. I mean, the Johnny Depp case that just happened was on the screen for everybody to see. It should have never gotten to the point that it did, but it did. I'm hoping that that's going to help raise awareness. If you want to see fathers back in the home, we need to start getting some of these incentives out that's in law currently.
Eric, what are some of the untold stories that you may come across or challenges that you see that fathers are facing throughout the country?
I mean, I have one current case that will blow people's minds. There is a father right now that is fighting to see his son that's been told he's got 2 to 4 weeks left to live from cancer. The dad is being told that he can't be with his child during that time because it falls under mom's vacation time with custody. This is one of the things that you shouldn't even have to have the courts involved. But unfortunately, because he has to get every little thing approved, that's what's going on. I mean, several different things over the past year where some of these guys are getting killed when they show up to pick up their kids. Not just guys, though. There's mothers that are getting shot, too. And I believe that stems from the conflict that's arising in the family courts, and it's really starting to clash. These stories, to be honest with you, Steve, are just completely endless. It just happens more and more. The courts do not profit if they decrease conflict. In order to increase profits, they have to have that conflict. And what better way than two people that once loved each other? Now they don't want to be together anymore. We already know they're experiencing conflict, but let's take them right there in the middle of that situation and put them in this courtroom fussing over who's going to get the house, who's going to get the car, who's going to get the dog. And it seems like almost every time the child gets caught in the middle. I believe I would like to see the divorce rate completely go down and the nuclear families start to stick together. But if there is going to be such a thing as family court and divorce, let's do something that we can to kind of decrease that conflict, because it's really starting to cause a lot of problems.
Eric, with Father's Day upon us on a personal level, what does Father's Day mean to you, and what do you think is important to reflect upon on Father's Day?
You know, Steve, being a dad is the most important thing that I've ever done. It helped me mature in many ways. I was still a kid when I first became a father, and I made many mistakes along the way. But there is no prouder thing than I've ever been in this life than a father. Speaking to the hundreds of thousands of fathers that reach out to the program and seeing the obstacles that they're going through, Father's Day is a proud moment, and it's also a very sad moment, because I'll probably be spending it on the screen with many guys that would love nothing more than to be with their children, and they don't get the opportunity. If we can't stand for this, if we can't change that, I don't know what we can stand for. If we do not have strong families in this country, we'll never have a strong country. And I think a lot of people have lost focus on that.
Eric Carle, thank you so much for joining us, and happy Father's Day to you.
You too, Steve. Thank you.
Again, thank you, NTD News. I'll repost that a little bit later on. And do me a favor, guys. If you see that come up, share it and make sure to tag NTD on there and say thank you. They got, I think, over 5 million followers just on Facebook alone. And anytime we have media that actually echoes what we're saying here, that's really big. I mean, for a long time, we have begged people to talk about this issue. That's one good thing that the Johnny Depp case brought in there. Even though it wasn't a child custody case, people are speaking about men's issues for the first time. You're seeing a man that went through allegations and he actually won. And pretty much as soon as it got on screen, everybody could kind of tell what was going on with it, right? But I thank them so much for doing that. Guys, I'm about to get to reading your comments. Again, if you got something that you would like to say to your kids, maybe you're being held back today, put it down in the comments. I'm on here, just as I said on that news interview, to do it for you. And another thing, and not to make a religious thing out of this, if you're a praying person or if you're not, prayers, good vibes, whatever it is, let's make sure to keep the Henderson family in our thoughts and prayers today, as he's getting a little extra time with his son today that's been told he's got very little left to live. and we've seen what's been going on with that case. I make sure anytime you see me on a news interview, guys, anytime I get that opportunity, I don't sit there and talk about Eric Carroll. I think every single time I'm bringing up John Mast, I'm bringing up one of these cases just to show people how crazy it's getting. Earlier this week, when we was reporting on the Henderson case, I can't tell you how many people came in here. I just don't understand. Why is he only getting FaceTime? Why is it? This doesn't make sense. There's got to be something more to it. But here's the deal, guys. We talk about this nonstop. No, there doesn't have to be a reason. This is a very, very big industry. It makes a lot of profit, and it profits off of this conflict that I was just speaking about. Without mom and dad fussing at each other, there's no litigation. It's not a $60 billion a year industry. It's not creating what you're seeing here. And all these dads that you're going to hear from today, the ones that aren't getting to see their kids, a lot of that is tied to somebody up in the legislation that knows what's going on, but they're too big of cowards to get out there and actually fight for it. There's too much money being made. And before I go down that rabbit hole, anyway, get your comments down there. I'll definitely read them today. But another thing that I'd like you to do, and if you don't mind, I'd like to take a second. I don't talk about this much on the show, but if you got a dad, for any of you fathers out there that had a dad that you was proud to have in your life, I want you to say Happy Father's Day to them as well. I'd like to see some more of that. And I know there's a lot of guys that reach out on the show that said, I didn't have my father. There might have been cases where your father wasn't in your life, and there might have been a lot of you, I hear that years later they find out my dad was never there. I blamed him for everything. And then I found out my dad wanted to be there. He went up against that system as well. I will be celebrating today. I'm not celebrating it, but today will be my 10th Father's Day without my dad. Now I'm going to try to get through this, guys. I lost him unexpectedly on 2013. Right at Christmas time, he started getting sick. He had kidney stones like the size of a $50, and he wasn't being able to pee. I mean, he was darker than me, and he had just turned completely yellow, and we didn't know what was going on. 3 days after Christmas, I took him up to the VA. It was a nightmare. Fighting that was just as similar as fighting family court. I never knew on my way back from that trip, 2 weeks later, I lost my dad. We got notified around midnight just for a simple kidney stone operation that my father was dying to get up there. I live 2 hours away from Atlanta. Me and my siblings got in the car and we started rushing down the road, and I got a call 10 minutes later that he didn't make it. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't realize how much I loved my old man until I didn't have him anymore. I mean, I knew I appreciated him. I called him all day long. And it was always one of those calls I would ask myself afterwards, like, why in the world are you calling this guy? Because he would get me upset. But he always told me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. And, you know, when he first passed away, man, I had several dreams about him. I don't have him as much anymore. But last night I had a dream I'd like to share with you guys, man. It wasn't a very complicated dream. There wasn't a lot of different things that I had to remember. All it was is I remember seeing him in a rocking chair. And I ran like a football player and almost tackled him and grabbed him. And my father embraced me and he just started rubbing my head. And I remember looking up at him and saying, I love you. And I woke up. They talk about toxic masculinity, how men can't express their feelings. And I'll tell you right now, there's nothing more that I'd rather be doing today than spending it with my dad. Give me a second. He instilled a lot of values in me that every single day I use. A lot of what some people call wisdom, it's just what was passed down to me that we talk about here. I got it from him. I saw him feed the hungry. I saw him pray for the sick. He was a pastor, and he did so much for people. And that's what this life is about, is helping other people. What we're doing here with this movement, we are trying to create a better generation for the future than what we have now. We don't want to see our kids go through this. And my dad was the example of that. I always said I would never be in the ministry. I didn't want to be a preacher. My dad, both of my granddads, my whole family was in the ministry. I said, that is the furthest thing from what I want to do with my life. I tried to go get a normal 9-to-5 job and do what everybody else did. And I ended up here. I never inspired to be sitting here talking to dads that are going up against the court system. But it's because of him and that fight that he instilled in me those values that I saw. And that's why dads are so important. I think today, how many of you that are on this live that are not being gave that opportunity to see your children today, how many children are missing out on these experiences with their father? How many of these children are missing out on those life lessons, that wisdom that could be imparted into them, that love? And it's a different type of love. Mom and dads love differently. We parent differently, but a kid needs both. They need both. And you know what? Even with people that aren't going through the family court stuff, being a dad can be complicated sometimes. Let me tell you something. I'm now a father to teenagers. I got 3 teenagers. I have one that just graduated high school. You want to talk about a challenge? It's challenging enough. But I'm going to tell you, being a dad means more to me than anything on this earth. I made so many mistakes. I still make mistakes. But becoming a father, the day I had children, it helped me to mature. It brought me to who I am today. And so when I was trying to think of, like, if I was going to make a show, what would I talk about? Dad was the only thing I could come up with, because that's what it means to me. That was what my life embodied at the moment. And I'll tell you, man, like, speaking on cases like John Mass, where he lost his life, speaking on cases like David Henderson, where he's fighting to see his son that's dying of cancer, man, it takes a toll on you. It takes a toll, because you feel very responsible for getting out the word on this, because the mainstream media is not doing it. They're just not doing it. And last year, man, I was having it rough right at the end of the year. And my wife, she is the only reason I stayed in the fight, man, because I wanted to give up so badly. Guys, it's not because I don't believe in what we're doing. It was just like, I wanted to get away from the darkness for a little bit, because there's so much darkness. And she gave me one of the best presents that I could have ever got. I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but if you got a father, every son, every daughter wants their dad to be proud of them. And if he was still alive, the things that we have accomplished, man, oh my God, you wouldn't be able to tell him anything. And it used to embarrass me sometimes. But the conferences that we went to, the news interview that I just did, getting to meet the president to talk about these issues, some of those things, he would be so proud. And I've sat in this studio. It was a really nice studio. I would love for you guys to see the whole thing sometimes. But I've sat in here many times saying, man, I wish my dad could see this, because he's a lot of the reason that it's here. And I've sat and I've cried about it, man. And it was all I can do is kind of wonder what that moment would be like. And one night when I was probably at my breaking point, I was going through some challenges. My wife got me this. I'm going to show it to you guys. Now, they didn't do such a good job on me. I think my eyes are kind of cockeyed. But this is the wall that's behind me right there, and with my Dad Talk Today sign, and it's got my dad standing next to me. This is the closest thing that I'm going to ever get to my dad actually standing here in person with me. And I got this hanging on that wall over there. I took it off to show it to you guys today. One of my prized possessions. And I could sit here all day long and tell you about how much I appreciate my old man and what that means to me. But I'm going to get to some of these comments now, but I wanted to take some time out to do that. And Daddy, I love you so much, and I miss you, and thank you for giving me the courage to do what we're going to do here today. He's still here with me, guys. And it's a part of the reason I can continue this fight. So if you got an old man out there that you appreciate, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it. All right. Yeah, this one comes in from Tim Trainer on YouTube. He said, yeah, I texted my daughter this morning, no reply. I am so sorry, Tim. I can imagine what that feels like. Mine hasn't gotten to that point yet. And, part of the hard thing, even like you saw me on the news, and I kept going, I struggle for the words to say sometimes, especially when I hear stuff like this, because no father should be going this. It's hard to make sense out of something that does not make sense, right? And I got a lot more that I'd like to say, and I got to watch my mouth sometimes, but no father should have to be going through this. Tim, if you don't get to see your kids today, I want you to know that you are appreciated. And do not give up. These days, this too shall pass. And for any of you guys that are going to have comments like this today, I want to say something to you. I'll say that at the end. Let me get down here. Mr. Jeff Morgan, great friend of the show. You've seen him on here several times. He said, how many of us wish we could have one more day with our fathers? Man, I'd give anything to have mine. Mr. James Hedrick said, thank you, Eric, for coming on today. This one's the hardest, being alienated in the cusp of losing my second mom. God bless you, and I cannot thank you enough. I want to thank you guys. Because I need you just as much as you need resources like this sometimes. This can be hard, especially when we feel like nobody's there, but I promise you there is a community of people that knows what it's like to be in your shoes. And we are here together. Together we will make this through. Mark Olivo said, there is no worse feeling ever. I dread this day. That's the sad thing about this, guys. Today should be a day of celebration. We shouldn't be getting comments like this. We should not be getting comments like this one bit whatsoever. But I'm going to do it. Because while people are out there doing the cliche thing of talking about Happy Father's Day, for many of these fathers, it's not a happy day. And we're going to shed a spotlight on it. James said, it's devastating. I love you kids and have never given up. I never will. I've never wanted to be anything but a great father, and I'm still swinging the bat. I'll never quit. Thank you. Chris Putnam, prayers today for David Henderson, who continues to have access to his dying son restricted by his ex in the court. Thankfully, David will be able to spend some time with his son today. That family is in our prayers. Dansky said, to all the dads in the trenches fighting the kids for cash system, stay strong. Thank you. Hold up, guys. I got to navigate through these comments. Mr. Mark Esquivel, my 3 girls are obstructed from calling grandpa, uncles, cousins, and dad today because the other parent is so scared of the love and bond between all of them. We all still love you girls and are still here when you get out of prison in your own home. Thank you. Let me read these first. Adam Gladfelter said, James Cedric, it takes the heart of a warrior to endure the suffering so that others, your children, etc., may claim the prize. Maybe spend the time on them anyway. I noticed the investments when we finally got to have visits. But they were always quality. You might just come up with something fabulous. Praying for your fortitude, fella. We got another comment about the Henderson case from Chris again. This is David's very good friend, by the way. Corbin's grandparents, David's parents, who have also been restricted from seeing Corbin, will see him for the last time today. They're not allowed to see him after today. Thanks for following, Eric. So for those of you, David informed us, according to the ruling, his parents will be able to see the child today. And it is their time to say goodbye, although he doesn't know what's going on. It's kind of hard to say your goodbyes when somebody doesn't know what's going on. And so on Father's Day, when we're talking about these fathers and these parents that aren't allowed inside their children's lives, there's a whole other side of that conversation that gets lost sometimes. Because it's not just one parent that they'll keep out. They keep out the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, siblings. There's so many other people that want to give that love, and it's being denied, that want that relationship. It's very, very evil. Diane Lynn Schlieve said, my dad died from lung cancer. I am so, so sorry. Khan Nu said, happy Father's Day. Thank you, Eric, for your great work. Thank you. Kenanen, he said, I heard that my daughter got married yesterday and is having another baby that I can't see. Man. I can only imagine, man. I've got to Give me a second because some people are commenting in and they're so long that it's cutting it off on my feed. So I got to go find it on my cell phone. Well, I'm just going to have to read what I can of it, guys. Late Valentine said, my kids are Annabelle and Rain. Right now, I don't have any custody agreement. The wife just packed her things and left one day and has not allowed me to talk to them or see them. I'm currently waiting on court papers to be served to straighten this out. Just wanted to shout out and say happy Father's Day to all the real dads out there that haven't done a damn thing wrong. And after turning the other cheek for a half decade, I'm back in the saddle and I'm going to fight until I think we could kind of get the gist of what's going on there. Blake, so sorry for that, my man. Bowen Shelley said, happy Father's Day to my dad, Captain Edward M. Shelley, MD, USAF. You were always there to help me out of the dumb and stupid situations I got myself into. Your medical career inspired me to become a paramedic and to be the best dad I can for my daughter. I miss you so much, Pops. Man, I love hearing stuff like this. My dad was in the Coast Guard, and so I can kind of relate. And one thing that was really cool, man, he was cool, literally and figuratively. He was stationed in Antarctica for 6 months. He's got an Arctic medal with a Eskimo on it from where he was down there. His job was to stand out on the ship all day long, breaking the ice off so the ship didn't fall. He had tried to tell me all these stories when I was younger, and I didn't listen. And it wasn't until the day that he passed that I was like, man, how much I would give to hear those stories now. But I'm paying for it. I'm paying for it because I will sit down and try to tell my kids stories of things that we do. And they're like, hey, just shut up. We don't want to hear that. But I tell you, one day those stories will mean a lot. Mr. Edward, Captain Edward, thank you so much for the good job you did for your son here, Bowen. And thank you for that comment, man. Happy Father's Day. Catherine Beth said, teaching humility through our mistakes, as we all have, is one of the most important life skills we can teach our children. That's it. You know what, man? There's not a single one of us on here that hasn't made mistakes. We're not on here saying that we're perfect parents, but you're not going to be able to find a perfect parent on the other side either. We make mistakes. That's part of what parenting is. And there's many different interesting traits, which is why I wanted to bring up the ones that parented us, because the things that we did, we either liked them and we continued to do it with our children, or there were some things that they did and we're like, I didn't really agree with that, so I'm not going to do that now. I mean, I got my butt tore up as a kid. Like if I back talked my dad, or I didn't do something I was supposed to do, the belt came off, and 6'9", wore a size 17 shoes. Let me tell you, that was a big belt. I felt the shoe too. But that was one of the things with my kids. I was like, I don't want to do that. But there were several other things that he instilled in me that I said, okay, I want to teach this to my kids. And I didn't understand it until I became a parent. And being honest with our kids, being honest with ourselves to say, hey, yeah, I did make a mistake, but I learned from that. Man, that's one of the most important things in life. Mistakes can be a blessing as long as we are able to learn from them, right? That's what it's all about. Minnow, on YouTube said, fathers matter so much. Yes, they do. Mr. Steve Jankowski said, to my daughter, Sarah, I hope you're doing well. Know that you are always in my thoughts and my heart. I so much look forward to seeing you again and meeting my new granddaughter. Know that I am here for you with open arms to be reunited as family as it was when you were little. The rest of your relatives, extended family are sending their best wishes and to love you and child. I will always love you, Sarah, my daughter, for the rest of my days, and know that I'm here for you whenever. You got cut off right there at the end, but thank you for that, Steve. Benz Franklin said, if my children ever read this, I want them to know that I made a lot of mistakes when I was young, but that never changed the love I have for you. Alcohol and drugs are a hell of an addiction, and I missed out on so much because I wasn't right inside. I am now sober, and I hope one day I hear from you. That would mean the world for you to forgive me, as I am not the same person I was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or even 3 years ago. I love you and always have. I want to talk to you there, Ben. If you'd have met me 15 years ago, you never thought I would be doing something like this. I went through the same struggles, man. And that is a really hard thing to go through. And when you're going through these addictions, people are so quick to look at the substances or the drugs and just like, oh, they don't care. They don't want to do anything. Once you start doing these things, they take over control. I mean, you are no longer the person that you once were. And I remember there was some very bad moments that I didn't think I was ever going to get out of, but I did. And part of me being able to become the dad that I am now was becoming a father and learning from that. As long as you work towards it, man, just remember, I thank you for that vulnerability and being able to come on here. Many people will go through this and they'll try to cover it up like I never did anything wrong. And they'll have situations like this. But the fact that you can talk about it and you can be open about it and admit those mistakes, tell me that you are on the right track. One of the biggest things with people that are suffering from addiction is the denial. They cannot admit that they've got a problem with it. But the ones that can are usually the ones that are successful in doing so. So it sounds like you are on the right track. And I really do appreciate that. Victoria McLaren Crippen said, you are a blessing. There are people who will appreciate you once they find you. Thank you. Please help us, guys. Continue to spread this out there. It gets harder and harder to make sure that we're getting these messages out there for situations like that happened earlier this week and all of the other cases that we are reporting on. But together as a community, we can fight this. If I didn't believe that we couldn't change this system, I wouldn't be here. I've had people tell me ever since it started, you will never, ever change this system. It is too deep. That don't scare me, man. That doesn't scare me one bit whatsoever. Chris giving another update on David. David has a final appeal scheduled for Thursday, may be too late. Prayers that the ex in court find grace to do the right thing and allow this father to be by his son's side in their darkest hour. Thank you for that. Brandon said, you are lucky to have spent time with your dad. I never met my dad. He killed himself when I was 13. Yeah, man. Yeah, and I've heard from other people that have been through similar situations. And when we was just looking at talking about the father that was struggling with addiction, right? We never know what's going on with people up here. And if you go back, to our parents' generation, a lot of them mental health was not a discussion back then. And then you look at the way society, and this has been going on for decades too, right? Men weren't encouraged to speak or to try to face their problems. It was just man up, get out there, do this. And there are some real life situations that we face. And to know that somebody thought that that was the last solution that they had, the only solution that they had. I would ask you, Brandon, to find some forgiveness in your heart, although that had to be one of the hardest things as a child. I don't know what was going through your dad's head. I don't know what he was facing. Suicide, guys, is 7 times higher in men after the age of 20 than it is with women. It is a major, major epidemic. And if you don't think these problems that we talk about on here are tied to it, a lot of these suicides are tied directly to family courts. They're tied to custody disputes. They're tied to false allegations where somebody feels like they have no other reason to live. No matter how hard they fight, there is never any relief. And I think every one of us have had those feelings at some moments. Like, would it be better if I wasn't here? What if I was never born? I had those. Good Lord, I had those. I had some dark moments, man. And some of us can't continue. And Brandon, I am so sorry. But I hope that you are continuing on to be that father that you need to be. And I wish I knew the answer to say for something like that, because there's really no answer. But I can't apologize to you enough. And I would really just, again, be in my head like, what kind of situation, what had to be going on in your father's head for something like that to go? One of the very first episodes, if you go back to the very beginning of Dad Talk, and it was probably a couple of months after we started, I had a boss at my job. I was an ice cream man. Out of anything, like I worked for Mayfield Ice Cream, and I ran a route, and it was butt busting work, man. I had to wake up at 1:30 in the morning, be at work at 3 o'clock in the morning because I had an hour drive, and then get on the back of a -40, -50 ice cream truck. When I was in there for 30 seconds, I'd have icicles dangling from my face, and it was hard. During the middle of that is when I started going through my divorce, and I'm going to tell you, I was not at work in my head. It was some of the darkest times that I'd had, but I had a boss, man, and he was very good to me, and he understood what I was going through and was very sympathetic. And I feel for some of these guys, because a lot of these guys are going through situations like that, and they have nobody they can talk to. Work don't care what you're going through; they just want you to produce. They don't care if you're eating, whether you're getting any sleep, whether you're able to pay your bills, whether you're there to pay your child support. They don't care what's going on. You need to show up. You need to produce. And a lot of these guys are trying to give something that they don't have. Their fuel tank is on empty. But I had him there, and he was really good to me. And I say this just to get to the point that right after my struggle, and he was an older man, I would say late 50s, his father committed suicide. And I remember what that was like for him. He had went missing, and nobody could find him. And he went back out behind his house, walked in the field, and found where his dad had taken a gun and shot himself. And he came on the show to talk about what that was like for him, what those feelings that were going through his head, how he had to process that. I would tell you to go and watch that, because a lot of times, I mean, even if it's an addict, like we was talking to earlier, a lot of these addicts go to rehab, and they try to talk to these professionals and stuff that have no idea what it's like to walk a mile in your shoes. They can tell you what's going on with the substance abuse, but they can't tell you what caused it, what drew that person there in the first place. And it takes somebody that's been there to understand what those feelings are. And I think if you watch that interview, you will find that very therapeutic there. So check that out. It was talking about my father's suicide with John Williams. So, Jason Bannister said, "Happy Father's Day to all. Never stop fighting for your children and make as much noise as possible." Absolutely. James Hedrick said, "Thank you again, Eric, for being there, providing some sort of way for us, at the very least, to be there for each other, especially days like today." Guys, if today gets too rough, you're having those moments where you feel like you're not going to make it through, again, there is a group on Facebook. There are several different resources, coaches, all these different things to say, "Oh, we're here for these alienated parents," and it comes with the price tag. We made that Dad Talk Today support group. It is 100% free. All you got to do is ask to join, because we kept it a private group, and you are in there with thousands of parents that I can guarantee you, there's thousands of them that have been through situations that are almost identical to yours. Don't be afraid to speak. If you need to speak, put it in there. We read through every one of them and we approve it. We probably disapprove more than we approve, because there's a lot of people in there trying to advertise services or put, memes or the different organizations. That's not what it's about. It's about having somewhere that you can talk to other people that understand what you're going through. Get support. And the more of you that we have in there, especially parents that have been through these situations and they're beyond it now, your brother over here that's just now starting that journey could use you. Sometimes the best therapy is people that will just give a listening ear. I wish I could sit down with every single one of you. Sometimes the only time I get to really connect with a lot of you guys is doing what we're doing now and reading these comments, which is why I wanted to do this today. But that was one way we did it, where as a community, we can come in there collectively and uplift each other. I wish I could report on every single story out there. It's just not possible. Maybe one day. But that support group, there's a lot of good people in there. Not trying to promote that. Again, 100% free. Make sure you get in there and become a part of it. NW said, I know that the system is corrupt and there are many lawyers out there that only care about money, but I must say God has blessed me with some amazing attorneys that are fathers as well. Man, that's awesome to hear. There are some good ones. It is a very small percentage, but there are definitely some good ones out there. And, you know, I've seen some of these cases completely transform attorneys. And let's be honest with ourselves here. I mean, the noise is starting to get out there a little bit more, but a lot of these guys grow up and they're going to college to get a profession to help make them money. They get in here, they become family law attorneys, not knowing what they're getting themselves into. Then they start hearing these stories. So this was a way for them to make a living. Most of them passion probably wasn't what was in their head. So some of them might have had good intentions, but again, it was a business. It was their job. And I've seen so many of these guys that become sympathetic and will really fight for their clients. But the other ones that will just try to increase that conflict because they want that litigation going. They're not there trying to decrease that conflict. And guess what, man? They'll act as a therapist to you. They'll act as your counselor because that's a pretty big price tag per hour. And it just keeps racking up. Just tell me your story. Nobody can tell their story in 5 minutes. It takes hours. So they'll just sit back. Yeah, man, I'm here for you. And that bill keeps racking up. But there's the other ones that I've seen that off the screen will sit here and talk to more of these parents completely off work, man. And they're amazing. So to hear stuff like that, brother, I'm not too sure what your name is, but that's good to hear. It's good to know that there are some out there. Michael Watkinson said to my daughter, Brianna, words can't even express how much love I have for you. I haven't been there for 11 years. I'm sorry for that. I tried to be there. I tried so hard only to be met with slamming doors. Your mom and I didn't work out. That's not your fault. We fought every day, all day, and you didn't deserve that. I tried calling her, emailing her, messaging her to see you. And over 11 years, I got the only chance to see you once. There's a lot that you don't know about me. You only hear. That is very indicative to a lot of these guys. How many of you know what it's like to call, to send messages and not hear anything? And there's that one side of the story that's going on. You know what that's like? You know, I go back to John Mass, man. When he died and I was trying to collect footage, you know, for the documentary, I went to his page and saw where he was sitting there with his kids after Christmas, letting them open their Christmas presents, saying, I did send these to you, but they got sent back to me. I mean, what kind of parent does that, man? He had to sit there and let his kids open presents that thought that dad never sent those presents to him. I will keep my comments to myself on that one because that gets me very upset. And the kids become a pawn. It's like a way of revenge. And then you try to communicate with them, I want to see my kids. And what happens is it becomes a tug of war. It's never got anything to do with the kids. It's about how bad of a person you are. Things about your past. It will become everything but about you seeing your child. And that's the same thing with family court. When we talk about these struggles, it will become about everything. And it always gets put back on these guys. Well, you just need to get an attorney. You just need to go fight in court. You just need to do this. No father should have to fight in the first place to see their kids. You should get over yourself. You should be able to sit down and come together and let these kids have their dad. It's that simple. The way that they always constantly throw this baggage on the guys, man. That's why we proudly carry that flag for fathers. Wanda Best, and I am fortunate that my dad is still with me, 80 years old with COPD. I also know both of my grandfathers. 3 years ago, I was with Dad on the honor flight to DC. One of my favorite photos of that trip is at Iwo Jima Memorial. My grandpa was a WW2 World War II hero and stood there on Mount Suribachi and watched that flag raising when it actually happened. How cool is that? Thank you for that, Wanda. And there's a lot of that older generation, man, they were cut from a different cloth. My grandfather was from World War II as well. My grandfather was the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. I don't know how many of you kind of study up on that old history, but he That was a huge song back in the World War II era. And so you hear some of these situations like the gentleman earlier where the dad kind of went, and took his own life. And I was talking about how they didn't have, the awareness about mental health back then. I'm going to tell this really, really quick, just because my grandfather, I would love to give a shout out to him as well. And thank you for that, Wanda. When my grandfather was 3 and his brother was 5, their mom died giving birth to what would have been my uncle. The next day, his dad gave both of them a nickel, told them to go in the store and get something. And when they came back out, he was gone. They went to a nearby relative's house. They would sneak into the house when their uncle would leave and the aunt would feed them. And they had to bounce from house to house. And that was pretty much the scenario for their childhood. When he was 15, when he was 16, he lied to the army and told him he was 18 to get in. Once he got in, they found out that he had lied. But instead of kicking him out, they sent him off to bugle school, where he became the bugle boy of Company B. And if you look up the bugle boy of Company B, it was it's quite a song that was famous back then. But just kind of hearing of what that was like. We talk about adverse childhood experiences. What did somebody go through in their youth that they still carry with them until their adulthood? And I didn't really put myself in my grandfather's shoes until I started doing this and saying, man, how hard that must have been. My grandmother said, like, when he first got out of the army, because he was over there, he was seeing all that different stuff. And he would just go nuts, especially when lightning and stuff would happen. Those World War II guys, they were heroes, guys. They were the reason that we have what we've got now. And to any of the veterans out there on Father's Day, thank you. To any of you that are sacrificing that time away from your families to fight for us, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you. It is the ultimate sacrifice. Ben Franklin said, I wish this dad talk was around 20 years ago. That might have kept me on track and sober, because those were dark years and not very many options to help. I can relate to that, man. That was where this whole thing started. So I tell you about being an ice cream man and running a route. So I had a lot of these rides where it was like an hour between the stops, and you get very sleepy, especially when you're waking up that early in the morning. So my way to keep myself entertained when I was going down those back roads was listening to podcasts. I was very big into Joe Rogan. I had several different podcasts. I'm a wrestling nut too, so I listened to all the different wrestling podcasts, and I just became obsessed with listening to those and looking for the new episodes. And when I found myself going through this struggle after going and talking to attorneys and seeing, some of the corrupt business that goes on, I started looking up podcasts around men's issues, around divorce. There was none there. None. And that was where that whole idea came. And I'm going to tell you, man, we started that thing from crumbs. I wanted to call it Dad Talk, which is what I still do. I call it Dad Talk, even though it's Dad Talk today. And I went to buy the website, and Dad Talk was going to be $2,000. Yeah. And I looked down below it and it said, Dad Talk today, $10. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. It's not that big of an investment. It's what you can make it. And we did that as a leap of faith. I told my wife about it. She said, Eric, if this is what you believe in, I support you. And we did. And I'll be honest with you, at first, I wasn't just going to talk about parental alienation and family court, because I didn't think there was going to be enough of you here to support it. Was I wrong? Man, as soon as we started talking about this, the amount of men that started coming saying, dude, I've needed this. We've heard several comments like this from men saying, I wish you would have been around when I was going through this. This is an amazing resource. And like I said, the more of you guys that we can get like in that support group and to get on these chats and to share this feed. Anytime you see it going, man, maybe you can't donate. If you can, one of the ways you can help this show, patreon.com/dadtalktoday. I ain't going to spend much time talking about that, but that helps us do what we can. But one of the ways you can support is share it, because there might be a dad that's facing some of the situations that you just heard us read about that does not know this exists. We do exist. And there's several of us here that are fighting this. So please help make sure that we get this out there to somebody that needs it. Letitia Phil said mental health wasn't spoken because the government felt as though it's time to give mental issue back to the families and shot down the institutes and asylums. Oh, crap. Catherine Beth said, great point. I hope these dads eat, sleep, and take care of themselves, get fresh air, and find someone to talk to, and find a way to be creative today and into the future. James Hedrick said, I am a member of that group. Thank you. Of course, said, I haven't seen my daughter since her first birthday. It wasn't until I was able to take her mom to court I was able to see my daughter. My biggest fear was that she wouldn't remember me. Not a day went by that I didn't think or cry myself to sleep because I was missing so much out of her life. You shouldn't have had to do that. And of course, man, I don't think I've heard from you before. Thank you for being here. It sounds like you're one of the fathers that is starting to find a little relief from this. Please make sure that you continue to come in here and give this encouragement to other fathers. But that's some of the behind the scenes. They don't think that men cry. They don't think that this is that big of a deal. But to hear that that was what you went through, and I think many of us in here can definitely sympathize with that. And thank you. Thank you for being here. Charlie Bazdane said, why is the assault on fathers and men? 3 years, 1,000 days of separation. I did everything right, nothing wrong. There is zero accountability, and we do not prosecute moms in this country. It is simply atrocious and catastrophic. I am unable to work, and child support got closed due to her domestic violence against me and my children. Yet she is rewarded with full custody, 76 court appearances, and $176,000 spent in family court. Why are we illegally persecuting men and violating their civil rights? The number one thing, I think your answer was in your question. You said $176,000 spent in family court. There's your answer. It's an industry, guys. They don't profit without conflict. They do not profit without conflict. There's going to be some cases that family court is going to be needed, but it is a very, very slim margin. And the way that the legislation fights us to keep 50-50, not in law, tells you everything you need to know. And a lot of those legislators that are voting on that, so that it doesn't become law, are attorneys. Surprise. Are you surprised? But there is a lot. I could do a full 24-hour episode and probably a week's long episode on why that is. And we've talked about it several times, but it's an industry. It all boils down to one thing: money. And that's about the quickest answer I could give. McCoris, he said something else. He said, my story is even crazier because over the past 3 years, finding out everything she did and the truth about most things, I'm blessed to finally be divorced from her. But I battle with her and her family just to be able to talk to my princess. It's been 2 months now. I'm so sorry, man. I mean, the hardest thing is you still got to communicate. And when you try to communicate with somebody that will not let you see your child, one that feels like they have the control, they can kind of dictate where the conversation is going to go and how you are going to do it. And so you have to sit there, keep yourself calm, keep your comments to yourself, and carry on. And that can be a little hard sometimes if you're facing allegations or if you're facing gaslighting. One thing I would say to you guys, because if the courts are still saying you got to communicate, one, document everything, okay? But two, every time they try to talk to you about something outside of when can I see my child or how is my child doing, you do not engage. And let me tell you something else. When you do not engage, that gaslighting, the accusations, things from your past, things from your relationship, they're going to increase. You're going to see it on social media. You're going to see it in all these different places. You're going to have strangers that you don't know that are going to be in here taking sides or whatever. It's going to get worse because you are not playing the game and they want that reaction. Do not engage. Again, all I need to know is how my child is doing. When can I see my child? That's all that matters. That document. You guys, that is your Bible when it comes to something like this. Remember it, live it, and don't step outside of it. And when that comment comes that just lights that fire under your butt and makes you want to, don't do it. Because when you do that, there's going to be a little picture taken, and they're going to say, see, that's who he is. And that's the way it goes. Hector Miranda said, it's been 616 days since I've seen my kids. Crazy enough, I felt like I was one problem away before considering suicide as a solution, but I'm not giving up. Do not do that. I am not here to shame you. I understand how people get to that place. But you do that, man, the system wins. Everyone that came against you wins. We need you here in the fight. Your kids need to see that when you went through the fire, you continued to keep going. They need to see that spirit of not giving up. That dad that fought, no matter how hard it got. We need you in the fight. I understand you're just venting here. And thank you for being vulnerable with us. But man, we need you here. A lot of you need to heal before getting into the fight. But we still need you here. And make sure that you get out there. Again, that support group is a very good place for you to get in here and get involved with other parents. Guys, I have got to go. I told my wife I was going to do 30 minutes. I'm at the hour mark now. And I do that a lot. No, I don't. I haven't been doing as much lately. But I just wanted to come on and do this episode with you guys. It wouldn't be Father's Day without coming on here and talking to my brothers, man. To any of you that are going through some of the situations that we just read, being alienated from your children. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see your kids today. Do not sit at home and sulk. You might not have the money to take yourself out. My wife took me a couple of nights to go to watch Top Gun. I'm not saying you got to watch that. I'm going to tell you, I thought they did a good job. There's no PC, politics, or any of that crap in there. 100% toxic masculinity. That's what they call it. And it was good just to get away. But find something for you to do today. Take care of yourself. Every time that you sit here dwelling on this issue, that you're beating yourself up for things that you can't control or not enjoying life, is a second that you're giving them exactly what they want. The system does it for profit. A lot of your exes do this because your life's going to be a living hell if you're not with me, right? They want you to feel that way. You don't give them that. We're not doing that here. Go take care of yourself today. For anybody that starts to struggle, make sure you get inside that support group. I want to say thank you to each and every single one of you dads that get up every single day and to continue to fight, even when you don't feel like it. Thank you for getting in here, sharing, spreading that word, making sure that we are letting the world know this is what's going on. We got a war on our hands. There's a war against fathers. And I'm going to tell you, there is a lot that's going on behind the scenes that is making that war 10 times harder. And I don't think it gets talked about enough. You got to be looking into this Cadence Law stuff. You got to be looking into VAWA and seeing what's coming up, guys. We need to be equipped to fight back at this. And we are only as strong as the resources that we have to do that with. I'm not doing that to scare you. I'm doing that to tell you the truth. For any of you fathers that are going to get to have that good day today, get out there, do it. Make sure that you are telling a father, somebody out there. The first thing I did this morning, I went through my friends list and went through my contacts and tried to think of every dad that I knew. And if I missed somebody, I apologize. I did not mean it. I got plans and I got to go do some stuff myself. But I went and told every one of them, Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. There's going to be several other pages out there that are going to be taking credit for the fathers right now. They are keeping you from seeing your children, but yet saying, no, I'm the dad. It's my day. They've got months. They've got months for other causes out there. This is your day, but they will try to take credit for your day as well. No, man, don't let them do it. I don't know what it is. Go out there, get you a nice supper, have fun, celebrate yourself, look at yourself in the mirror, appreciate who you are. If you still got your dad, go give him a big hug, man. I don't care what's happened in the past. Guys, man, get out there. Make sure you let your parents know you appreciate them. And because one day when you don't have it, it sucks. Man, it sucks. So, all right, I guess that's it. That's our Father's Day special. I'll repost that link to the news article a little bit later on this afternoon. But wishing all of you a happy Father's Day. This is Dad Talk. I'll see you next time.
Hey everybody, Eric Carroll here. Thank you for tuning in to another exciting episode of Dad Talk Today. While we fight for you, we would ask for you to please help fight for us. Like, subscribe to our channel, and ring that bell so you get notifications every time we go live. There's also Super Chats, patreon.com/dadtalktoday, and other ways you can support our channel. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next.